Okay, so we're back, and now we're going to go over the design, and we're going to walk through what we would do normally when we design for the fantasy football application, and then break it up into its respective tasks. In this case, these tasks are going to translate into React components that we will demonstrate and show in the browser. So here on our screen, we have the mock-up or the design for the fantasy football application, and we are demonstrating or showing this in two states. The first state on our left is the default state where we have a collapsed view of a player card, and then on the right we're showing the expanded view for the player card. And I like to take this expanded view and just break it up into its respective components. So at the very top we can start off with a header component, which will keep the information for the marketing or for the branding, such as like the title of the application, using the Watson logo, and perhaps include some information icon that's going to give us a little bit more information about the overall app. Below that, we're going to have a drop-down component, which is going to allow us to toggle between the various fantasy weeks. And then for the projections and player buzz component, we'll probably treat that a little bit different, seeing that they house multiple features within the component sections, or within the containers themselves. So for projections, we'll probably have three children components. One is going to pertain to the boom and bust, which is telling us what's the likelihood of the player having a great game, which we classify as a boom. What's the likelihood of a player having a bad game, which we classify as a bust. And what is the projections for Tom Brady for that given week. Beneath that, we're going to create a component called the PDF graph, and that shows us the probability distribution spread simulating from 5 points to 35 points, and what's the likelihood of Tom Brady being able to score any one of these points on the graph. And then this dotted line down the middle simulates this is what we project for Tom Brady to score. So the red line on back to the left is going to show us this is where we start off with our bust, and this is where we start off with our boom. And anything greater than these points would be for boom. Anything less than this point here would be for bust. And lastly, for the projections container, we're going to probably create another child component called trends, which is going to show us the historical information for Tom Brady. So how many times did he have a great game? How many times did he have a bust game? And how many points is he averaging so far for the season? And below that, we're going to have another parent container, which we will call buzz. And this is going to allow us to view the sentiment for that player. So we can see if people are speaking positively or negatively about Tom Brady. And below that, we have supporting evidence for the sentiment that the user should be able to click on and view the respective article or listen to the podcast for the user or for that football player. And then we're going to create a button, and we'll call that the compare button component, and that's going to allow us to toggle between the single player view and the multiple player view, where we can compare other quarterbacks to Tom Brady. All right. So what I went ahead and done is wrote this out and created what could be a little to-do list for us to do for this video. In the next video, we're going to dive a little bit more into this section here, where we'll talk about integrating the data into our components and using D3 as a data visualization for our PDF graph. So let's go ahead and create these components. So we're going to use that tool or package that we've downloaded earlier in our previous video called the Create React Component folder. So we're going to call this npx, and we're going to call that module using crcf. And what we can do is specify a folder that we want to create to store all of our components. By default, it's going to search the file system in the current directory for that specific folder. If not, it will create that and then append the respective components that we want to include in there as well. So let's go ahead guys. And we're going to run a separate command to run the child component creations. We don't want to confuse that with these guys here, so we will do that. So there is some additional parameters that you can pass whenever you want to create your React component. By default, whenever you run this command without any additional parameters, it will create these components, and these components will include an index file, a JS file of the name of the component, which will be where all your front-end business logic will go, and then two additional files, one being a test file using Jest, and the other one is a CSS file. For demonstration purposes, we're going to omit using the test file, so we're going to say no test, and we're going to specify no CSS because we will be using a different method of styling our components. We're going to be using Sass. So let's go ahead and specify that right there. Let's go ahead and click enter. And it has created these components for us. So if I look inside of here, we have created our components. Nice. And then looking inside each one of their respective files, you can see by default the tool is going to render the name of your component that you've created. So it's a little useful. Let's go ahead and import that into our main application. These guys here. Alright, and now we're going to include these in the render function. I forget the compare button either. Alright, awesome. And let's add that here. Perfect. So, since we have hot reload baked into our create React app, React script functionality, we should see this reflect in the browser. And we do. Cool. So we got it for header, dropdown, projection, buzz, and compare button. Yep, header, dropdown, projections, buzz, and compare button. Perfect. All right. So let's go ahead and in this video, the next step, let's go ahead and stub out these components. And as I was mentioning earlier, we're going to be using a placeholder image to stub out these components. So let's go ahead and do that. So I went ahead and I've extracted from our sketch file these components, and I've created images from them, so you can do export selected, and it'll allow you to persist whatever you want as a image of any format. It could be PNG, JPEG, even SVGs. I went ahead and did that, so let's go ahead and go inside of these components. Let's go inside the header component. And let's import header it's inside assets, image, header.png. Start here. Let's see how that looks in that guy. Okay, it's a start. It's actually JPEG. So that guy there. All right. I know. Replace that guy. So that's PNG. Let's look at our browser. I'm sure it is correct. Maybe let's keep that one. I know it's not. It's probably not saving to the right directory. Let's try this again. Desktop. Yep. All right. Perfect. So that guy's been replaced with the correct one. Let's go to our drop down. Drop down from image, drop down.png, believe. Wrap this guy in the dev. That's in the next line. And then we're going to do some styling to this afterwards, so we're just getting this guy, all the placeholders in place. No pun intended. And let's go ahead and let's create these child components in here. So I'm going to go inside projections, and I'm going to use the npxcrcf, and I'm going to call the first one boom bus, no test, no CSS, and I want this one to be a functional component. Meaning we're not going to have a lot of all those decorators using the class syntax. We're going to keep this one very simple. So let me get out that command. Yeah. Functional. Awesome. That's very cool. And let me import that guy there. Bus. And now I'm going to place this guy here with we have for boom bus. Alright, let me just see how that guy shows. Boom bus, nice. So let's go inside of the boom bus, and we're also going to be using the placeholder image in here. What's the name of that, just to make sure? It is, I believe, this guy. Yep, that is the guy that I would want. Use this guy. Perfect. Best image from this. And I'm going to image source equals the last image, probably just wrap it in div for now. Alright, then we have our boom bus. We have that for projections. And then we need to create a PDF graph. CR. This guy. Well, we'll call it PDF graph. Alright. And that in the next video we're going to go into more detail. That's going to be the guy that is going to have the D3 integration. So D3 integration. Import star actually from D3. We're going to have to install this as a dependency for application. But we'll save that for the next video. So, okay, cool. We have that guy there. Let's go ahead and include it into our projection. Import PDF graph. PDF graph, pop, 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 pop. Nice. PDF graph. Alright, so now you see it just say PDF graph. That's okay. Alright, and let's go into our buzz. So our buzz is going to be broken down into the sentiment, and I'm going to call the next one player media, is what it calls it, right? There we go. Buzz. And MPCRF, and I'm going to call this guy sentiment. You know what? What I can do actually, to save us a little bit of time, I'm going to stub this guy. We're just going to use one image for both of these guys. So we'll do. So inside of buzz, import buzz from buzz.png. Image source, buzz. So clear buzz, we have this guy here, and we could do the same thing for compare button, which I already have an asset for. And we can put that guy in here. And we have our button. Nice. Okay, so we have these guys. We have our header, we have our drop down, we have our projections, and we have our player buzz. And inside of projections is where we're going to focus more on the D3 integration. Okay. Alright. Cool. That is good. Alright, so this application is starting to take more form. Keep in mind this isn't final. Our last video is going to be focusing more on styling everything and making sure that it is looking more like the design. But we have our initial components stubbed out. So now in our next video we're going to talk about the data integration, and we're going to focus on the PDF graph and showing how we can bring D3 into our React projects. Alright, see you guys then.